The four horsemen of the apocalypse, these terrifying figures from the book of Revelation, unfortunately, are riding high today. And they are driving us away from God and towards sin and death.
Russia has stepped up its attacks in the east of Ukraine.
How many people have died globally because of the COVID-19?
It's now climbed about 28,000. As you see, official spirit could double as freezing.
Are these dire predictions coming true?
Initiating satellite scan.
Greetings again from On the Lookout, or OTL, warnings and wisdom for our troubled times. I'm Ric Saludo, President of the Center for Strategy, Enterprise, and Intelligence, a strategy and risk management consultancy, and public affairs and religion columnist with the Manila Times. And I'm again joined today by economist and Marian Solidarity affiliate, Dennis Arroyo. Hello, Dennis. Thank you again for sharing your wisdom on Catholic apparitions, visions, and mystical messages.
Thanks and greetings to you, Rick, and to all our viewers. We had a good first episode on why God sends warnings and allows chastisements. And the paramount reason is the salvation of souls.
Salvation indeed, yes.
He wants to wake up sinners, especially the billions who do not believe in God or are in danger of eternal fire. So last time we asked the video asking, do we heed the warnings from above? We have not. We have not, to be honest. And we see this, the news and the way people live. God is hardly mentioned, and the commandments widely violated. Our Lady herself prophesied this in her apparition in La Salette, France, in 1846. She said something that she said to the two young missionaries, Marian and Maximin, all governments will have one and the same aim, which will be to abolish and do away with every religious principle, to make way for materialism, atheism, spiritualism, and vice of all kinds. Today, even the U.S., where the Declaration of Independence acknowledged the Creator, they say that this declaration acknowledges the Creator, a supreme judge, and of divine providence. God is being taken out of public life. Its Pledge of Allegiance says America is a nation under God, and yet we have this, in the U.S.
Yes. Well, it's certainly happening in America, where for instance, there is a desecration of religious statues in the guise of stopping prejudice toward certain races. There is also, of course, the whole movement to reinstitute, to spread the cult of death through abortion, and that's happening in America. But globally, we're also seeing, as I mentioned in the beginning, the four horsemen of the apocalypse.
Yeah.
And I will quickly go over them. First, there is the white horse of conquest, and carrying a bow. And we see this in the superpower rivalry between the West and what is called the East, which is China and Russia. And this threatens our world with nuclear Armageddon. The second one is the horseman of war. And we see this in the buildup of armaments. Last year, more than $2 trillion for the first time was spent on military expenditures. Then you have the black horse of really commerce, the drive for profit, even at the cost of people starving or being deprived of medicines, as we saw during the pandemic when vaccines were channeled to those who can pay the highest bidder. And finally, calamity, the pale horse of death, which comes upon us and is decimating people who could be saved if people just spent more for disaster readiness and came to the aid of people in need. So that this is also God being swept aside from the world. And, we ourselves in our country, we've seen these terrible things happening. And unfortunately, one of the spearheads of this, to some extent, is the United Nations. Recently we had visiting officials of the UN Human Rights Council. And one of the things they brought up with the government, they were pressuring the government to legalize abortion as a human right. I mean, it is absolute, this is a crime against the unborn. And it is the rights of the unborn that need to be protected because they're utterly defenseless. They're utterly defenseless. And so we have to stand up to this wave in the developed world, even in the developing world, and certainly even in the United Nations, of sweeping aside God and his precepts. Now, we are thankful that in our country, we still ban abortion, we still have restrictions on, we still ban divorce. One of the two countries, I think, as a part of the Vatican, that stands up against the wave of secularism and anti-religion in the world, no? And we have to stand up for this because the world is in fact becoming more and more godless. Last time, as I mentioned, and you are aware of this because of your background in surveys, there was a 2017 Ipsos global survey of 28,000 people in 32 countries. They asked about hell and a host of other things, but they also asked about God and belief in God. And the good thing is most people still believe in God. That's the good news. Unfortunately, when you look at the wealthy Western nations and some of the nations that came under communism, they're losing the faith. In fact, something like less than 40% of in 8 countries and no longer believe, or only so much believe in God. Whereas in Sweden, you have as low as 22%, and in China, as low as 16%. Now, if that 16% is a correct finding for all of China, then that basically means that nearly 1.2 billion Chinese, 1.2 billion Chinese do not profess belief in God. And in 2017, that same year, the Pew Research of the United States came out with a finding that while in developing countries, 2/3 of the people or the respondents put value on religion. Okay, so in developing countries, 2/3 give value to religion and presumably believe in God. In the affluent countries, less than 3 out of 10, less than 30%, believe in God, not believe in God, but give value to religion. Give value to religion, and a lot of these are either wealthy countries or those that came under communism. Now, I'm going to ask you, if you're an economist, you're a consultant, or you had worked in the World Bank and the Asian
ADB.
Development Bank, so you know development.
Yeah.
From your knowledge and learning in your studies in development, what is it about becoming developed, becoming affluent, that might lead people away from God? I think it should, in fact, bring them closer to God in gratitude. But from the surveys, it seems when they become affluent, they turn away from God. What's your experience and knowledge there?
Well, it's a case in Europe and Americas. No, the Industrial Revolution began in Europe, began in England, and also Belgium, France, Spain, and all that. And you saw progress there. The same way in the U.S., they began to boom after their Civil War. No, so from that time on, they began to care less about the spiritual life, the afterlife, and more about their own progress. They became more comfortable, okay, and therefore more complacent about the things that really matter. They began to worship technology as a god in itself, and it's said that I've heard it said that our technical knowledge far outranks our growth in wisdom. Okay, we know how to make the atom bomb, nuclear fusion, and all that, and yet we're far behind in man's wisdom, especially coming from faith. That's why we're in danger of a nuclear holocaust.
Yes. Well, in fact, one of the things that I was made aware of even as a student, that one can really, progress so much and learn so much in the secular field, but the religious knowledge does not match it. And so many people lose faith because their religious knowledge remains stunted at high school or even grade school, so that's a concern. But, one thing that is really unfortunate is that when we are blessed with good fortune, with development, with affluence, and with the scientific and technical knowledge, you can it doesn't it's not automatic that you just turn away from God. In fact, there is also the other option of saying, Lord, thank you for the progress that we enjoy.
Yeah.
Why can't we? To me, that's the right, that's the righteous and really reasonable approach, because for us to think that all of this was just our own doing is a lie. That cannot ever be true, because there is so much that bounty that comes from things that we cannot control.
Yeah, everything is grace.
Yes.
The wealth we have is grace. The jobs we have is grace.
Yes.
It's a benefit from God. So we must be grateful to God for these things. Grateful for the security for
Yes.
families. Grateful for our jobs, our incomes, and all that. It's we must be more thankful. And beyond that, by doing away with God, by going away from these values, we get to prioritize the wrong things.
Yes.
No. So we spend more on military arms to in the developed world, at least, no, neglecting greater things like poverty, hunger, unemployment. We have skewed values.
And in fact, that's one of the things that is pointed out with this more than 2 trillion spent on military gear, plus an increasing amount given to nuclear weapons. In the past, it had been declining, and now it's going up again. And in the face of that, we need 100 billion pesos, dollars, to address global hunger. We can't find the 100 billion, but we have 2 trillion spent on armaments. And this is really the challenge to humanity, that we must be able to, return to God instead, and thank Him for the good fortune instead of shunting Him aside. And here's the problem when we shunt God aside. If we start turning to Him for what we need, if we stop thanking Him for what we are blessed with, well, we're pretty much asking Him not to have anything to do with us. We're saying we don't need Him. We're saying we have nothing to thank you for. You tried telling that to a person who gave you, it helped you in life, and you're basically asking that person not to have anything more to do with you. And that would be a great tragedy for humanity.
We Catholics are under no obligation to believe Marian apparition.
The Vatican has directly approved at least a dozen, precisely because they started gaining international renown.
Imagine the anguish of a mother whose child died. It's more horrible for a mother who knows her child went to hell.
You are watching ETVN Philippines.
Emmanuel.